Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 149, Mark chapters 8 and 9. Well, Mark in his gospel uses a technique that often appears in the Gospels and in the Bible. Similar events happening again with slight variations. So the first thing that happens is Jesus feeds 4,000 people in exactly the same way as he fed 5,000 people in chapter 6. But this time, instead of 12 baskets left over, there are 7 baskets. So is there a meaning with the number 12 we're supposed to understand? Well, the number 12 usually refers to the 12 tribes of Israel. And in this case, it could also refer to the 12 disciples who represent the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So what about the number 7? Well, the number 7 can refer to the Sabbath, the 7th day of the week, but it can also refer to the groups mentioned in Deuteronomy that were in Canaan during the time when the Israelites returned to the Promised Land after the Exodus from Egypt. The Gentiles that were in the Promised Land. And the area where the feeding of the 4,000 happened was in the Decapolis, a primarily Gentile area. So the 7 baskets can represent Gentiles, non-Jews, who will be able to be part of God's kingdom. So the early readers of the Gospel of Mark, who were primarily non-Jews, remember, Gentiles, would have found that really exciting, that they were included. The Pharisees came and began to argue with Jesus, asking him for a sign from heaven to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation." Then Jesus left them, and getting into the boat again, he went across to the other side. Now, the disciples had forgotten to bring any bread, and they only had 1 loaf with them in the boat. And Jesus cautioned them, saying, "Watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod." And they said to each other, "It's because we have no bread." And becoming aware of it, Jesus said to them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear? Do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" And they said to him, 12. "And the 7 loaves for the 4,000. How many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" And they said to him, 7. Then he said to them, "Do you not yet understand?" Then, just like last week, when Jesus healed a deaf man who had trouble speaking, Mark tells us about another healing. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had put saliva on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Can you see anything?" And the man looked up and said, "I can see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on the man's eyes again, and he looked intently, and the man's sight was restored, and he saw clearly. And then Jesus sent him away to his home, saying, "Do not even go into the village." And you can guess why, right? Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "Oh, they say you're John the Baptist, some people, and others Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." And Jesus asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Ooh, yay for Peter, right? Now remember, what Peter and the Jewish people believe the Messiah is going to do is way different than what is actually going to happen. They believed that the Messiah was going to restore their kingdom, kick out the Romans, and they would be a nation ruling themselves again, just like in King David's day. But what does Jesus do? Then Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly to them. Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, Jesus rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was changed right before them, and his clothes became dazzling bright, such as no one on earth could brighten them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Teacher, it is good for us to be here. Let us set up 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. And then they asked him, "Why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first before the Messiah?" "To be sure, Elijah does come first and restores all things," said Jesus. "And why is it written then that the Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected?" And they said nothing. And Jesus said to them, "Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written about him." And who were they talking about? John the Baptist. Jesus then heals a boy who appears to have had epilepsy, which the disciples had been unable to heal. They had been trying to cast out a demon. His disciples asked Jesus privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And Jesus said to them, "This kind can come out only through prayer." They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him, and 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But they didn't understand what he was saying. They were afraid to ask him. And then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another who was the greatest. Jesus sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be the last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." What happens next? Look for Bible Shorts, episode 150. Mark, chapter 10. What must I do to inherit eternal life?